So tell us
Yeah,
about yourself and we'll go from there.
Yeah, so I'm 53. I'm married with two boys, 17 and 19. So we've had a teenage boy house of lockdown over the last couple of months, which has been great. I'm an area mortgage manager for a bank, and I live in West Haddon in Northamptonshire.
And are you a family of runners, or is it just you that runs?
Well, my wife runs as well. She's more what she'd call a proper social runner, which means that she constantly talks on the runs. So
sounds good.
She's done a marathon, so we can't knock it yet. And she does little bits every now and again. My boys typically aren't runners. But, Jake, who's 19, he suffered a brain injury just over a year ago as part of a car crash.
Oh,
And as
sorry
part
to hear
of his
that.
recovery, no worries. As part of his recovery, he's been getting involved in doing a bit of running, and he's got himself up to half marathon stage. So he's yeah, we wouldn't necessarily think that we're a family of runners, but then lo and behold, most of us run. It's the way it is sometimes,
but
isn't it?
it does sound like it's sneaking in. It's sneaking in, which is good. So you've got a fit family, even if it is just for fun, which is good. So let's talk about guide running.
Yes.
How did you get into it?
Yeah.
How did you get into
Well,
guide running?
like a lot of things that I end up doing in life. Yeah. So
Oh, hold on.
I
Hold on. I don't know if it's because you're moving, but it was going I don't know if it's because you're. Do you want to speak a bit now? Sorry. If it's you're right now.
Okay.
You're crackling up. Oh, let's try.
Can you hear me okay now?
I'm going to see if it's me. I'm going to move into another room. If it's still, just in case it is me.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to say it's your headset if it's me. Don't worry, Craig can edit all this. The joy we have of podcasting, hey. Do you want to try now?
I know. So is this any better?
Yeah, that sounds good
that sound?
so far. That sounds good. So apologies for that. I think that's me. So yes, you were telling us how you got into guide running.
Yeah.
No, it's definitely your end. It's your end. Sorry, Simon.
Volunteered me for it.
It's your end.
Let me just have a look at, I'm just going to have a look at my,
Do you want to take your headset off and see if that's any better? It might be echoey, but we can explain to the listeners.
Yeah, how does that sound?
That sounds good. I can't see you, but I can hear you.
I'm just going to, okay, just give a look. There's the possibility that I might lose this signal, but only momentarily.
That's fine.
Let's just see.
I love this. See, not everything runs smoothly.
No, okay. Can you hear me better now?
Yeah, that's perfect. That's perfect.
Okay.
So,
good.
start again.
So I was saying so I got into guide running because my wife works at local school, and at the time there were twin girls who were 11, and junior parkrun was just starting up in Daventry, and year to go along to junior parkrun, and the answer was no, because we've got no one to run with. So my wife said, "Oh, don't worry, me and my husband will do it." So she came home from school and gave me the good news that on Sunday I was guide running, and that was it.
And you've never done it before then? You've never done guide running before then?
No.
Okay.
And I'd got no interest in doing it whatsoever. So for a couple of weeks, I got myself on a guide runners course. and carried on running with these twins, Scarlett and Eliza, junior parkrun every Sunday, and that was great. And you know, you just get into that routine of that's what you do, and I got lots of practice. And as part of being a licensed guide, you go on a national database. So contacted by visually impaired runners who would see if I could guide them at a particular event. And after I'd been guiding for about a year, so this is about 3 years ago, I was contacted by a lady, Agatha, who was a student at Nottingham, who was working down in Daventry for a few months. And she was also training for a half marathon and needed a guide for that. Half marathon together, and because I was training for London the following spring, I'd sort of suggested to her that, you know, if ever you're going to do a marathon, then now's a great time, because if you can do a half, you can do a full one. You know, that old trick that we all fall for.
Yes.
And the fact that she was a student and she'd got guides around, you know, it was like, will there ever be a better time to do it? Yes, we ended up training for a marathon together and doing London in 2018. And we've done a few more marathons since then.
So how was that experience for you as a guide, running a marathon on your own, then running as a guide?
Yeah, it's very, very different. I've never felt pressure running a marathon, but the pressure that you feel as a guide is immense. And actually, as it was, I picked up an injury just before London, so it was touch and go on whether I was going to be able to run London, and I did finish. But we had another guide who helped us, and I let them go at, I think I lost something like 18 miles, where I said, look, you know, the injury's kicking in, so carry on. But all of the other marathons and races, you always feel the pressure to make sure that nothing happens to you, in a way that you just do not feel it when you're running on your own. And you know, if you've run these big marathons before, and you can imagine what it's like at the start of a marathon when you're guiding, and how difficult it is to make sure that we're not tripping over people and letting people know that we've got a trying to give us space. You know, these are also the days before 2 meter social distancing.
Yes, yes.
So it's a very, very different experience. You don't get the chance to look around quite so much, because your eyes are, on the whole, 6 feet ahead of you on the floor, and the occasional looking up to see what's ahead and looking around. But it's not quite the sight that you'd expect if you're doing it on your own.
Talking about COVID, which seems to be a hot topic. Oh, hello. Can you hear me? Hello? Simon? Can you hear me? Simon?
Yeah.
You're just staring at the screen, so I'm like, can you hear me? Yeah. I'm like, what's going on?
I can, yes.
I am going to move in another room, but I'm not sure if it is me or if it is you. But it'll give those that are watching the YouTube video fun, won't it? Going around my house. So sorry for the frustration of this.
It will, and you know, if ever you needed to sell your house, then you've already done the virtual tour.
Now you're in the office room, and I look like I've got a ball outside my head. Oh, how annoying. So sorry, so what was the bit we was touching up on? We were, yes, you mentioned COVID.
Yeah.
obviously, I'm saying obviously, 'cause I'm assuming that those that you regularly guide, especially the young girls, they're not running much at the moment because
Y-
of the 2 minute
Yeah,
meter distance. Am I correct in saying that?
yeah, and so the people that I regularly run with, they are, in my opinion, they've been really sensible, that they're being safe and they're respecting the 2 meter rule. Um, there's one or two others I know who still are running, and there's one friend I've got in particular who she's doing untethered runs. So there's rather than using a 1 meter tether, they are able to socially distance.
Okay.
But again, you've got to be really careful on the route that you've got, and for others, it's a case of using treadmills.
So,
So
yeah, sorry, I interrupted.
yeah, so for most of the visually impaired runners that I know, they're able to find a way of making it work, typically with treadmills. And as I say, there's one or two who are out there trying to do runs that are socially distancing. But it's hard, it's very, very hard. And I think that, when you look at how we've all felt with the lockdown, but as a minimum, we've
Yes.
been able to go out once a day to do exercise. For those that are visually impaired, on the whole, to do that, they've been restricted to running with family members, and not everyone can do that. And it's probably fair to say that most of the visually impaired runners that I know don't have family members who they can go running with.
Oh,
So
right.
it's been
Okay.
tough.
So they really are. Is there a way that for these, has anyone at Daventry, are you part of Daventry Roadrunners
No, I'm part
Club?
of Rugby Runners, Rugby
Okay.
Northamptonshire,
Do you
but I know a
have
lot of the Daventry Roadrunner guys.
any of the clubs? Do you know with the visually impaired, are they having a connection during COVID? So they feel that they are still part of the running community?
Yeah, so what I've done, we have a weekly mystery guide call,
Okay.
and the just like it is with the running community, the visually impaired and guide community is quite a tight one. I know runners and guides from all over the country, and for the last few weeks we've been doing a call where I've got Agatha and Lizzie, who are two visually impaired runners, and I invite either a guide or a guide and a runner onto the call, and they don't know who it's going to be until the call starts, and the guide will be doing a run and effectively doing a virtual guide. So
Okay.
I've been around Daventry Country Park where I've been describing the route because both Agatha and Lizzie know that route, and we've had other people doing the same on other routes,
Brilliant.
and the two twins as well. They came on board with them as well, where I ran somewhere where they all knew. So we're doing the best to try and be creative, and I think that it's the friend part of it that's coming out, as opposed to necessarily the guide, where we're just making sure that people can connect. And there's another running group as well, Achilles International, who are a worldwide disability sports group, and they have there's a team in London, and they have a regular weekly call where runners and guides come in and very much like a lot of the Zoom calls that are going on at the moment.
No, that's
But we're doing
brilliant
it.
news.
So we're doing the best to help people, and I lent my treadmill to Agatha for the duration of this, because it means that she can at least go on a treadmill, and that's really what we're trying to do.
Out of curiosity, how many marathons has Agatha done now?
She's done 4. London twice,
Oh,
Valencia, and we did Miami in February. and we did the Shires and Spires Ultra Marathon this time last year as well. So it's 4 marathons and an ultra.
Wow, how do you feel that you've inspired her to jump from a half and she's just gone way beyond what you initially suggested, a marathon, and now she's doing an ultra?
Yeah, it is something that it definitely gives you that great glow and warm feeling. I think the inspiration is more the other way. The inspiration that you get from running with all these people who overcome massive disabilities to be able to do what they do. And I think that when you look at the type of person who's going to overcome disabilities, barriers, etc., to do fantastic things, they typically are really great individuals, you know, with bags of personality and bags of get up and go and real toughness. So all of the visually impaired runners that I've run with, they've got this fantastic thing about them where when you're in their presence, it's a great feeling.
I have to
So
ask you, this.
yeah.
Is Agatha faster than you now? Or are you both the same pace? I have to ask. Be honest.
She's not fast enough. So her marathon time, a marathon PB, is 5 hours and 27, I think. So
Wow,
bang on
that's
5 hours.
brilliant. She's done a marathon.
That was Valencia, and mine is 3:35. So she's got a bit of catching up to do. But there has definitely been some incidents where she'll look to outsprint me. So for people who know Brampton Valley Way, and the long tunnels that are maybe quarter of a mile,
Yes.
old railway tunnels, a few times we've gone along there. When I've looked at what the fastest split that we've done has been through the tunnels, because she will go as fast as she can, because it makes no odds to her because she's blind, knowing that for me to run in a dark tunnel is really difficult. So I think that there have been moments where she's definitely outsprinted me, and I'm sure that at some point in the future she'll be faster than me. But you know, typically you need your guide to be significantly faster than the visually impaired runner. It's not imperative, but the last thing you want to be doing, particularly when you're looking at a marathon, is for the guide to be struggling to keep up with the visually impaired runner.
So is it different? Because you said you've done 2 types of marathon. You know, you've done the marathon, you did the Shires one,
Yeah,
you know, the ultra. Yeah. They're completely different. One's road running, one's trail.
Yeah.
How did you adapt? And is it different being a guide? Do you feel you're talking more because you've got more obstacles on a trail route?
Yeah. So the interesting thing is that, and I think depending upon the race and the course, you will get differences. But when I'm guiding Agatha, she likes me to keep the conversation to a minimum so that she can concentrate. Oh, I know.
I love it.
And the story that we use is so that she can concentrate on her running. But I think just being able to allow her to concentrate. So when it's road running, on the whole, it's very much a case of giving her the notice of the turns that we've got, and talking through any changes in the running surface. So normally on a road run, there doesn't need to be a great deal of talking if it's a straightforward road without any potholes. When you then look at Shires and Spires, probably 2/3 of that was off-road, and you know, nasty off-road. It was proper ploughed farmers' fields off-road. So there were parts of it that the degree of difficulty was too much, so we needed to walk. Even some of the downhill bits, because if you can imagine, realistically, you don't get a great deal of notice of potholes and rabbit
No.
holes in fields and literally ploughed fields. How on earth do you guide someone through a ploughed field? So we probably walked more than we would have done ordinarily, just because of the difficulty of it. But you learn to have little codes for certain things. So we make reference to edges. So just being able to say small edge or 2-inch edge or something like that. So and curbs, and just the when you're running along a path where you're going across people's driveways.
And it dips,
Yeah, and and it's just the sloping down, sloping up, sloping down, and you learn what instructions they need, and you adapt accordingly.
Is each runner different? So like when you run with the parkrun run with the twins,
Yeah,
is the communication different than when you're running
yeah,
with Agatha at the
absolutely.
marathon?
So probably the first thing is obviously everyone's sight is going to be different. There are the majority of the blind stroke visually impaired runners do have some sight, not all, but the majority do. So understanding what their sight is, what they can and can't see, is obviously very useful, because there's no point describing things that they can actually see. Most of the runners have what I would class as probably some sort of blurred vision. In other words, they can tell that there's trees, they can see there's people in front.
Shadows and
They can't see the detail. Depending upon the light, if there is a black path which has got grass either side, a lot of them will be able to see that, but they won't be able to see any potholes or something like that. So a lot of the things that you give instruction on will be the same, whoever you're running with, but a lot of it is a case of know your runner, and understand how they need to be guided. And something else to bear in mind is that most of the runners that I guide have a number of other guides.
okay, so it's not just you they rely on.
No. So I think typically where you have someone that might be training for a half marathon or a marathon, and they may be running 3, 4, 5 times a week, they will probably have a number of guides. It's very much a case of the guide making sure that they adapt to the runner, as opposed to expecting the runner to be adapting to different guides every day when what they're doing is hard enough.
So how did you find, obviously you said earlier about the difference in marathon times, how, I can imagine it with the park run as well, with the twins, but then again, they are young, so they might be speedy. How do you adapt to being slow? Because that's a big time difference on the marathon alone. You must feel like you're walking. How do you, because that's a lot of hours on your feet as well, not just physically, but mentally, how do you, or are you busy because you're giving instructions to the visually impaired person?
I am constantly looking at my watch, which, to be fair, I think I probably do as a runner on my own anyway.
We all do that.
Yeah, so that what you want to be able to do is to make sure that you're running within the range that the visually impaired runner wants to run.
Okay.
And again, it's not always going to be precise, but for example, it might be that when I'm doing marathons with Agatha, would say somewhere between 11 and 11.5 minute miles, or don't let me go faster than 10.5 minute miles, or things like that. So it is quite nice running slow. And you still feel tired at the end of your marathon, that's for sure. I've never guided a marathon and at the end thought I could comfortably now do another one. But you've got so many other things on your mind. It's more mentally draining than it is physically tiring. So I find that when we get to 20 plus miles, my legs are normally okay. They know they've done 20 miles, but my legs are normally okay. But I find I'm more liable to make mistakes. I'm
Oh,
more
okay.
liable to get my words a bit muddled up, and just lose your concentration a bit. And again, if you bear in mind that you've got crowds, you've got things to see, and the big thing that we notice is it's not us, it's everyone else. In other words, when you then get to water stations,
That's
at
true.
20 plus miles, people do really unusual things that you can't predict. And you'll also get at 20 plus miles, people all of a sudden will stop. So when what you're doing is running as a two, and there could well be lots of different little groups in front of you, you get a group of three who suddenly stop, and you've got to have your wits about you to be able to move the runner to one side, change directions and guide to one side at short notice. So it can be just mentally quite tiring and draining.
I can imagine London being like that because it is mainly a charitable marathon.
Yeah,
I can, being honest, you would have done more than 26.2 miles at that marathon. I
yeah,
don't know anyone
absolutely,
that
yeah,
does exact. So
yeah,
that would be a clear example. How do you cope? Because you're from the start, you're like that. You've got obstacles
yeah,
in your way. It's bad enough when you can see, that you're like,
yeah,
oh, thinking, how do you cope? Or
yeah.
what's your,
So you get into a routine, and I think my favourite guiding phrase is the old Chuckle Brothers, to me, to you, to you, to me. So rather than trying to necessarily tell the runner exactly what's ahead, which might spook them, they don't need to know what's ahead. They just
might be
need
a
you to be
giant
able to say,
dinosaur or the
yeah,
rhino
absolutely. Oh,
or washing
yeah,
machine on
yeah.
someone's back.
But the urgent thing that they need to know is, what do you need me to do? So,
Okay.
for example, just doing the, okay, to me, to me, to me, to me, and that's the way that I will be gradually moving us over to the left to be able to go past people, or to you, to you, to you, to you, if we gradually want to go to the right. So that's typically the way that you'll manage those. And as I said before, you've got part of you is the looking what's 6 foot ahead on the floor. But then it's also the looking what's ahead from the point of view of turns, and whether there's any big bollards and people that you need to move, so that, again, when it comes to water stations, that you've got your wits about you, and we know what's coming up, and we can react to anything that we need to.
Would you say it's fair to say, being a guide, you learn as you carry on? As you
Yeah,
go on,
absolutely.
it's
Yeah,
not, you're not going to know everything from the very first time you're a guide.
yeah. I think that the England Athletics course for guide runners is a really good one.
Yeah, I've done it.
Um,
I've done it as well.
yeah, great. So it's a good one, but it's very much like learning to drive. Then when you're given a runner, um, you just end up finding a way of doing it. So a lot of the techniques that I use are just ones that have evolved, as opposed to ones that you get trained on the course.
So how, you've only been doing this for 3 years, and it sounds like you've
Yeah, but I think it's
gained,
4 years.
but even still, it's still very young, I think, in the running journey. How do you wish that you'd done this sooner? Because it sounds like you've learned a lot from it and still
Yeah,
learning.
yeah. I mean, I didn't really start properly running until I was about 48, 49.
Okay,
Um,
you're a late runner.
so
Okay.
yeah. So I probably wish that I'd started all of the running beforehand. But I honestly look at. I think guide running itself is relatively young, in that the guide running courses and the involvement of British Blind Sport, I might be wrong, but I don't think that's much more than maybe
No,
5, 6, 7 years old.
agree. It's very young.
So yeah, I think I'm quite happy with when I started it, because the journey that I've been on with Scarlett and Eliza, you know, you can imagine 11-year-old twins who they're now 15, and when we first started and they knew that I was doing a marathon, we shook hands that when they're 18 that we'll do London together.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
but, you know, they're exceptional swimmers, so maybe that would mean that that they'll be swimming as opposed to running.
Can we touch on that a minute? Because I do know one of the twins you were saying is a very good swimmer.
Well, I mean, to be fair, that they are both top disabled swimmers. They both swim for England, and Eliza, last October, I think she broke the British record for one of the distances for her age group and disability. So yeah, they are really, really top people. So so being involved in their journey has been fantastic, and you sort of think it's quite nice to have started my guiding
Yes.
with those, and to be part of a fantastic journey. And again, being lucky enough to have come across Agatha at a point where you know, she had been running before, she'd been doing parkruns and a 10K, but she was just really about to start on that long distance running journey.
Can you give us an idea? How old is Agatha, if you don't mind? Like roughly. You don't need to
She
say
is
exact.
24.
Oh, so she's young. She's a young runner.
Yeah,
That's good.
she was a student when I met her at Nottingham Uni. She'd got another year to go. So yeah.
Have you run with any male visually impaired
Yeah,
runners?
yeah. I've got a chap, Roger, who I've run Bedford Half Marathon with for the last 2 years. And again,
I bet you two love the start, being as it's so narrow.
oh, yeah. So, I mean, Roger is, I mean, he's London based and has a lot of guides. And in 3 years, he's just about to win his 250th medal.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Um, and I'm pretty sure it's something like 3 years, 250, but he races more than once a week. And again, you know, he's an amazing character who
Is there a
just
certain distance, or are you saying races of all distances?
um, yeah, predominantly 10Ks and half marathons. He did London last year. So yeah.
Wow. So, what do you think that Northamptonshire can do? I know Northampton Sport do focus on it, but there feels that there's not that much. At Northampton Parkrun, we have one that regularly attends
Yeah,
called Peter. He's a very late runner. He's about the same age as me, in his mid-40s, and he came in, if I remember, 2018, when he could see shadows, and then over the time he completely
yeah,
lost his eyesight. But we found that he got stronger in his mentality of, I'm not stopping, I'm carrying on, I want to do a marathon, and that is his long-term goal. But there isn't, in Northampton town itself, there's not a strong support of guides, being honest, and feel that the communication of guides is not out there. And like I said, I'm a guide runner. You said about the database, but unless the Olympics or there's a big thing going on in the
yeah,
UK, I don't get an email or hear anything. What, if you are on the board or if you're in communication, what could you relay back or make a difference so we can support more the visually impaired? Because I know at
yeah,
Northampton Parkrun, we are a great park run for
yeah.
diversity, because we're tarmac, we're fairly flat,
Absolutely, yeah,
but it's finding the sources and to encourage visually impaired.
Yeah.
What's your
Yeah,
views on
so
that?
I think that it's all part of the bigger picture of how do we encourage people who don't think running's for them to take part and give them the belief that it is. So, part of
Good
it
point.
is around disability, but it's just generally how inclusive are we? And, to what extent are some of the running clubs seen as being any ability, or to what extent are they seen as being a bit exclusive? So I think that just generally the things that we would do around, how fantastic is parkrun around all of that. Everyone knows,
Amazing.
um, that it's not about who comes first, etc. And when we then look at counts to 5K and all these running groups that there are, where people can typically turn up in January full of Christmas turkey, and they'll feel that there's lots of people that are similar to them.
It won't be that now. It'll be after the lockdown. Parkrun is
Oh, I
just going to
know. Yeah,
explode.
yeah, yeah. So I think that when we look at specifically with visually impaired, have them as part of that participation and inclusivity, but reaching out to some of the visually impaired groups and disabled groups and trying to get people involved, and giving them the belief that stuff is possible. What I will share with you, when I mentioned that we did Miami Marathon, and we also mentioned Achilles International. So Agatha and I did Miami Marathon in February as part of Achilles International. We were there was about 50 to 60 disabled runners, and some of them were amputees. Quite a lot of them were amputees from various wars. Majority American, but there were runners from all over the world who were there. And just hearing some of those stories where the thing that got them involved were Achilles International or other people going along to these disabled groups and say, look, we appreciate you've just had the most horrendous time, you've lost your legs or whatever it is, but believe me, there is stuff you can still do and we can help you. So I think
Good point.
when you look at local level, if there are guides who are qualified but don't have anyone to run with, then to what extent can we reach out to some of these groups, give them the belief and the support to be able to do it. Now, Northamptonshire Sport do a day typically in Northampton every year where it's have a go at various different types of sport. But there's nothing to stop us approaching local groups. So that would be the thing that we could do.
And is it easy to find information about the visually impaired locally?
What, around identifying those people who are visually
And those
impaired?
groups, yes.
Yes, sort of. If you go to the right places, there are. So there is a group in Northampton, and they've got one visually impaired runner there. They were involved with the Northampton Half Marathon last year.
Okay.
And again, I think that the guys that run Northampton Half also did Shires of Spires, and they were
Go Beyond,
fantastic.
yeah.
Yeah,
Go
absolutely.
Beyond,
So
yeah.
groups like them are fantastic at proactively trying to do stuff, but it needs running clubs and parkruns to do that as well.
Yeah, I'm working with Go Beyond at the moment. I'm their champion to try and get wheelchair races. So
Yeah,
for their
yeah,
Northampton 6-mile race, we was hoping to do it this year, but the chances are
yeah,
not good.
yeah. So it is around just reaching out to some of these groups where, if you think about who they might be, then it's not that hard. It's not that hard to do it.
What about, and we'll end on this, what advice would you give for a runner or fast walker who wants to become a guide? What advice would you give?
Um, have a go at doing it. So if there is the opportunity to become a guide with a fellow guide, then do it. One of the things that they can do, if they really wanted to, because the courses that are run are typically once a year, and let's face it, they're not happening this year.
No.
If they go on to Find a Guide site, literally type in Find a Guide, it's a British blind sport England athletics thing. If they type in their own postcode, then it will bring up all of the guides that are in the vicinity, and there's nothing to stop them contacting those guides to be able to say that I'd like to be able to get involved, kind of come along and just see what it's about. And it could well be that the majority of those guides say, yeah, we'd love to, but currently we're not running with anyone. You know, what I did last year was to train 4 or 5 people from Daventry road runners to help me. And I think that once you're a guide, it's quite easy to be able to train others ahead of people going on the British blind sport and the England athletics course.
Oh, well, thank you for that, Simon. Thank you. I'll
Yes,
end on that because that's really good. No, thank you. I've learned a lot.